Those who don't know me, my name is Justin Wetterer. I am the implementation consultant for Astra. So today we're going to talk about scheduling preferences. So here's kind of the agenda for today. So today we're going to be doing, like we just did, a little welcome and introductions. So today for this webinar is primarily going to be a lot of just me talking and showing you inside of Astra Schedule. But if you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to use the questions and answers or even the chat. If you have questions on anything, we'll be glad to answer them for you as they come. So a little overview of what's going to happen today. So we're going to have a little overview over the scheduling preferences. We're also going to talk about, the big question: how does it work? How it works with Optimizer? Some best practices, and of course, some tips and tricks. And of course, we'll end with what's next after this. All right. So just to kind of let everybody know again, everybody's muted. Use the Q&A feature or the chat, and we'll answer the questions as they come. All right. So let's talk about scheduling preferences and Astra Schedule. All right. So right off the bat, we're going to go over to academics and scheduling preferences, which is under the admin. So it was academics, admin, and then scheduling preferences. All right. So everything starts with the optimizer. Everything starts with scheduling preferences. So this is where you're going to have, this is where you're going to put in all of your preferences. So all of the preferences could be something like, for example, Dr. Smith for his biology class has to be a lab. It also has to be a workstation, a wash station, sorry. It also, also Dr. Jones, he loves a certain building. So that would be a scheduling preference. The biggest preference that most people pick are, a lecture type of section needs to be in a lecture type room. So, stuff like that. So I'm going to start by going, so this is again, so for those who just joined, so we're under academics, admin, and then scheduling preference. So we already have one here. This is one of our demo environments. I'm just going to, so we don't mess with that, I'm actually going to come over here and I'm going to choose room preference set. So here I want to give it a name. So this is important. You want to make sure it's a name that works. If you have, so some people kind of do, general preference set. I've actually seen some that have, like, if you have different, campuses, let's say, that have different preferences. Some people just lump them all in at one time. A lot of groups just kind of keep everything separate. I'll tell you a little trick here. We actually have a client who we just did a similar training with them last week, actually. They have multiple campuses. So they actually have a preference for each one of their multiple campuses. So they actually have a campus that's more in the northwest of town. So they actually have a preference called Northwest Preference Set. And they know that that's the Northwest school or campus. And we know that that's up there. So you really want to make sure it's like I said, somewhat descriptive. And our purposes today, I'm just going to call this general preference set. I actually just saw another person pop in, which is great. Welcome. If anybody has questions, use the chat button or the Q&A button to ask any questions. Your description, it's optional. For our purposes today, we'll go ahead and just, call it preference set or scheduling, let's just say. Okay. So from here, here's actually your first tips and tricks for or best practices. As you guys are going through this, it's going to be very important that you save a lot, because you don't want to go through adding all this stuff and you're like, oh yeah, I probably should have saved. And you go to save and you don't get the green check mark. If you don't see this little green check mark that says changes saved, it didn't save. So make sure that you guys do. I always tell people, hey, it's good. It's a quick second. You finish with one rule, click save. Finish another rule, save again. So like I said, it's very important that you click save and that you see this green changes saved button. Okay. So we're going to go over to this add rule. And let's kind of talk about something for a second. So there is, for those who don't know, there's an algorithm. Basically, it's our behind the scenes, how the optimizer works when it comes to those scheduling preferences. So basically, it takes these rules that we're making and it goes through and batches them all up. Then what it does, it says, okay, I'm looking for all the similar ones, batches up into similar ones. Then what it does, it goes to all the ones that are not similar. It then goes to those that are a little bit more scarce. So, for example, ones that might say, I have a rule that says I have to have biology has to be in chemistry, has to be in a lab with a wash station. So stuff like those ones I have to have in this building, stuff like that. Those would be addressed first. Then after that, then it goes to the ones that just aren't as strict. It's kind of like, hey, these subjects have to, in these courses, must be in this building. Or actually one that's a little bit less strict is kind of like, hey, these courses need to be in this lecturer's type of room. So basically that's kind of what you're looking for. So let's kind of talk about some of these. So we have the preference and we have the criteria. So the criteria is going to be your campus, medium type, subject, course, instructor. Then over here we have the preference, which is kind of divvied out by the room type, certain feature, a region, which for those who don't have regions are great because they're a group of rooms. So if you wanted to say, a certain subject has to be part of this region, which is a list of, 30 rooms, that would be a region. It just makes it a little easier to you're basically telling, which kind of falls into that kind of scarce. It depends on the scarcity, I guess, if that's a word. But, it kind of looks at it. You're just saying, hey, this subject goes with this block of rooms. Go. So it just kind of depends. Then, of course, we have buildings and rooms. We'll kind of talk about these weight and name and override in just a second. But let's go ahead and show you guys. Let's set up one. So our first one is actually going to be, so the campus meeting type, we're good there. There's any. But I want to do room type. And I'm going to go add. And I'm looking for one that's called Zoom room. Yep, that's where I want it. Okay. So here is we're going to talk about one of the first things. Actually, I'll talk about this. Let me explain something first. So basically what I'm telling it to do, I'm saying, hey, any, doesn't matter which ones, I want it to go into a room type of Zoom room. Now, these weights, the weights are going to be the weight is going to be from 1 to 10. It's kind of like 5 is right in the middle. 10 is I gotta have it. So it's kind of like, you have one of those instructors who, comes to you and says, I'm getting old and I gotta have certain rooms because they're on the first level closest to my car. Please, I have to have these rooms. You could use something like that. That could be like a certain building. We could say certain rooms or something. You can kind of do it that way. But you would say like 10. And we're going to talk about some rules in a second that have, these higher weights. But basically what that does is you're just telling it, you're basically just saying it, hey, from 1 to 10, it's kind of a ranking. The modes. So we have normal, required, exclude, and blocked. So normal is kind of like optimizer looks at that first. It's kind of like, hey, you know what? I mean, if you could put it in here, if it can't, then hey, look elsewhere. Required, you're basically just saying, hey, I have to have it here. Have to have it. If not available, it will move on to the next spot. Or for those who use the optimizer, it could cause a bottleneck. So if you just tell it, hey, the following is required to be in these 2 rooms. Well, eventually, if you have a lot of rooms that need to be filled in just those 2, someone's going to run out of space. And somebody's section will be left out. So that's where it's going to be important to make sure that you're going to have that. It's going to happen. Exclude. This is going to be, you're basically just telling it, hey, don't go here. I just don't want it. Don't put it here. Don't go here. Blocked and exclude are kind of the same thing. Blocked is, you're basically saying, hey, don't go here. Blocked is also saying don't go here too. Now with a little bit of, so basically we're going to try one. So we're actually going to choose exclude for this first one. So basically what we're telling here is we're saying any campus, any meeting type, any subject, any course, any instructor, exclude Zoom room. So I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and save. And I saw the green check mark, so that's what I want. So I'm going to go back to add rule. So what I did is I just told it, hey, don't go to Zoom room. However, now I actually have some where I do want it to go to Zoom rule. And we're going to need to use the override. So in this case, we're going to go over here to, we're going to say certain subject. So we'll say a subject of poly and a subject of psychology. And now I'm going to say I do want the room type. I do want it to be a Zoom room. And now I want it to say, I do want it to go here, and I'm going to require it. Now, the last rule said, hey, any subject, do not go in Zoom room. Just don't put it in there. What I'm telling it here is I'm saying, well, I actually do want it to go here. I actually do want it to go to Zoom room. So I'm going to override it. All that's going to do is you're just saying, you're saying, hey, don't put it in here. However, these 2 subjects, I do want it to go in there. And that's what we call an override rule. You could have one, let's say, for example, here, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to save. It's good to save. Add rule. Let's talk about that blocked. So I'm going to go to buildings. Let's just say you have a building. So I'm going to say the Johnson building over here. And I'm going to say blocked. This could be a You could say, hey, if let's say the Johnson building is under renovations, you don't want it to do it. You could do this one of two ways. You could say, you could come in here and say, you could add a rule. Of course, the downside to adding a rule to block it for renovations is now when it's open for renovations, you got to remember to take it off. So you can go into the building themselves and tell them to do not optimize. That's another way. But at least we're going to kind of show you an example of a blocked one. So yeah, we'll just say yes. Yeah, I forgot to wanted to save that. So let's say, so here's another one. Here's a common one. So I'm going to go, and by the way, if anybody has questions, the Q&A or the chat button. So let's add some other ones. Let's add a common one that I see all the time. So we're going to say meeting type of lecture. And then I want it to be under a room type. And I want it to go to a lecture. And I want it to go to a classroom. So if I go here and I say, lecture and classroom, I can come over here and say, gotta have lecture meeting type, and I gotta have it into a lecture or a classroom. And I want to require the weights. If let's say you wanted the lectures to go to lectures first and then followed by classroom, I could just change this to a 6, let's say. And then now, so here I'm saying lecture meeting type, going to lecture. I want it to go lecture first. And when lecture's not available, classroom, and it's a 5. Now, because I did required, what could happen? Well, if you have, 1,000 sections, let's say, and you're trying to put them into, either 1,000 lectures, meeting types, I always look at it as, it's Black Friday time, and there's 1,000 toys that everybody wants. Well, guess what? There's 1,200 moms out there that are kicking and screaming and nail biting and nail scratching to get at those first 1,000 toys. You're going to create a bottleneck. So you're just going to have to find another room later in that when we see the results in the optimizer. So all kinds of fun things. So we'll go here and I'll okay this. That's a good one. Again, important to save. Okay. Let's add some more. So we want, another great one. Oh, let's see. Oh, did I save? Can't remember. Well, I'll save again. And there you go, saved. So I can go add rule. Another big one everybody gets is the labs. But I actually want, so let's kind of combine some things. So for this one, we want it to be for chemistry. And then I want it to be a room type of lab. I do want to require it. But I also want a feature, because chemistry has to have something with a sink. And I want it required. So basically what I'm telling this rule to be, and this would be one of those. So I'm seeing more people come in, which is great. Let me kind of recap this thing at the very beginning. So the algorithm, so how the optimizer works, the optimizer takes all your rules, clumps them all together, and starts sorting them. And it's going, okay, these ones, oh yeah, these guys are similar. then it kind of goes to ones like this one, for example. That's a little bit more scarce. It's, this looks like something that I'm going to need to make sure I have to do first. So it looks at the ones that are scarce, more scarce, scarce. What's a good word? They're more scarce. Then what it does after it kind of does the ones that that have a really good rule for it, goes at that one, then goes to the ones like the one I did previous one was lectures. All lectures got to go in lecture or classroom. Does those last. So with the optimizer, like I said, it goes to the ones that are a little bit more harder to fill, then goes to the ones that are easy. Lectures with lectures with classrooms, etc. So in this case, now I have one that's going to be a little bit more scarce, because now I'm saying, hey, for any ones that have a meeting type of lab, that's a chemistry, got to have it in a lab, and I got to have a sink. So for this one, me clicking OK, I'm saving, green check mark, I'm good. So that's where it's really important to go in and put more in there. So let's actually add one that's a little bit harder, that now we're adding a little bit more, what's a good word? A little more juice to the rule. So I'm going to go ahead and add rule. All right, so we're going to go here, and we're going to go ahead, and this is going to be any campus, any meeting type, but I'm looking for particular subjects. So I'm looking for history. Oops. So there's history. Looking for this subject, JPN, and this math. Plus, I'm looking for particular courses. So I'm looking for this history 8, 10, 16, 27, 55. And now I'm looking for math 5, 11, 12, 15, 18, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 32. I'm going to click OK. So here I chose certain subjects, certain courses. So now I'm looking for, so I want these subjects with these courses, I want them in certain rooms, but I want to determine which room. So I need to go ahead and we're gonna add, I'm just gonna add a bunch of rooms, and then we're gonna talk about each one of the weight and mode that I want to do. So atoms, let's see, should be 107, there it is. Another one. 104 Zoom room. 104, let's see what is it? There it is. Zoom room. 105. 106. And 102. Okay. So, and I'm going to make all these required because I want all of those courses or all those subjects and the courses that I picked, I have to have them in one of these rooms. So now with the weight. So the weight determines, you're telling the optimizer, hey, based on this weight, this is how I want you to go looking first. So I actually want them to all be, I want you to look at 10 first. And then the rest of these is going to be 9, 8, 7 and 6. So go here first. I'm going to click OK. So as a little trick, by the way. So by the way, this, now since we have a few rules. Oh, well, can't forget. I got to save. There we go. I saved. So the pencil allows me to go in and open that rule. And I can see how I did it. The X would delete the rule. This little plus button, this kind of opens up. So if we have lots of stuff, so here I'm going to open up this one. So here I have that. So as a little tips and tricks, best practice, it's good to, so you can kind of see I did this, but I did this on purpose so you can kind of see them together. If you have rules that are an excluded or an override rule, it's good to put them in order that you want them to do. So here I told it to do, hey, don't do anything in Zoom room. However, I do want poly and psy in that. I do want poly and psychology in that Zoom room. Now, a lot of you are probably wondering, well, why don't just make one for that? Well, I want to tell the optimizer under no circumstances to put anything in the Zoom room. That's why I made this an exclude rule. So here I can hit the little pencil. That's why I excluded Zoom room. And that's why I came in here and used the override. So basically I told it poly and psychology have to be in Zoom room, but override my rule. But it's good as a nice little best practice. Like I said, it's good to keep them together. If you are just kind of chugging along here and, oops, I want to put these together. How do I move things? Oh, I don't got to start over. No, you can just grab like these little dots right here and you can just drag and drop. And how you kind of know is there's a little green line. You can kind of see like right there, a green line that goes straight across. That's how I know where it's going to drop. By the way, if there's any questions that come up, please, use the Q&A button or the question or the chat button. I'll be glad to answer your questions. Okay, so let's do one I'm sure everybody gets of those professors, which, oh wait, did I save? Okay, good. There's my changes. So you'll notice that's a big best practice. Save a lot. I can't tell you, for those who didn't hear my story earlier, we did have a similar training with another client. And they have a lot of campuses and everybody in the room. Somebody was doing it and she went in and she goes, hey, I have a question. We walk over to her and I go to save and it says, I gave you this error. When was the last time you saved? Oh man, you did say to save a lot. Is this one of those ones? So we tried to get around it, but trying to figure out what caused the error. And in the end, she actually just had to close, cancel, and then had to do it again. So that's why it's important to make sure you do go in and save a lot. But okay, so let's add a rule that everybody gets. Those instructors that let's say they're tenured and they've been at your school a very long time, so they kind of get a little bit of their way. So here's where we can go in, and so here's one where the professor or the instructor has to have their way. So we're going to go and find an instructor. And as you can see, I'm just scrolling through, but I can just come up here to the search and type out the name. There it is right there. Click OK. Okay. So this instructor, Marcina, she said in her requests, which, by the way, that's kind of a great little that's a good thing. Depending on your school, how you guys kind of do your scheduling, how you do your scheduling preferences, we usually recommend, especially when we're doing these, doing this is, doing the implementations of Astra Schedule. We usually say, hey, it might be good to talk to your deans, your chairs, and say, hey, we're doing this scheduling for spring. You have any preferences? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking. Here's my preferences. Great. Okay, so let's Marchina. She wants a particular building. Oh, sorry, she wants a particular room. So we're gonna go over here and we're gonna say mid-campus 105. And then she wants Sullivan 114. She's got to have one of those two rooms. So for her classes that she's doing, or her sections that she's doing, she's got to have them in 105 or 114. So mid-campus 105 and Sullivan 114. All right, so we're going to go here and click OK. And there we go. And now if I wanted to, like I said before, you can kind of scroll up, move things around. And again, very important to save, green check mark. I know I'm good. So let's add another one. This is a good one. So this one, we actually have certain instructors. We have two instructors or three. Let's see. Looks like we have three instructors who need a handicap space room because for them, they have to have it. So let's go and do that. Make sure I save. Yep, there it is. So I'm going to add rule. So we're going to come down here. So we're going to add those professors in, or instructors in, I should say. So here's one. All right. So here are those four instructors. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say the feature that we're looking for, and it has to be handicap. Now that would be a feature that would need to be added to your rooms. So if you're kind of looking at that, you're like, "Ooh, this would be perfect for us," and you got to do it on your computer. And after this, you got to play because I'm a big fan of playing around. If I just learn something, I'm gonna go right over to it and play with it right away. So a best practice for you guys is what you learn here, go play with it afterwards. So in this case, if you go across, you wrote down, oh, handicap and the features. Oh, this is perfect. I don't have handicap. What? Yep. Got to go in your rooms. Got to add handicap as one of the handicap accessible as one of your features. So. All right. So I'm going to go there. Click OK. So all I'm just saying is for these four instructors, they have to have a room. Oh, got to make this required. Got to have a room that is handicap accessible. And to my point back, I can just kind of move things up. And do you have to move it? Technically, no. It's good. It's going to be important to move things around if you have any override or any exclude with overrides, and that way you can kind of see them together. So as you're going through this, you're finished with all your preferences, and it's good to kind of move things around. Do you have to move everything all around? No, but definitely those exclude and overrides, yes. Highly, highly recommend those. You definitely go in and do those. Okay. So let's see what else on best practice. For those who are doing a or actually everybody who's attending, I assume you probably have a preference. One of the recommendations that we like to give people is definitely go through your current preferences. Look to see, are there better preferences? Are there preferences that I can tweak, or do I really need those preferences? That's where it's important to use those. I'm looking at my other best practices. For those who didn't kind of see this, you can go in if you have, everybody has, seems like every college I talk to, there's always some renovation to some building, to some floor. You can go in and say if there's a certain building, let's say, that's being renovated, you can come in here and say, blocked. And basically it's looking for anything. So if it goes in and goes, I'm out of space, I'll go to the Jackson building. Oh, wait, I have a rule that says don't put anything Jackson. Oh, okay. No, it's blocked. Okay. If you use this rule to block it off for renovations, you want to make sure. So I'm going to save this. This could actually be a really good one. And I'm going to move this up to the top. And the only reason I'm moving this to the top is you want to make sure that you do go in and remove it later. You do want to remove it later because, you don't want to have it in your preference set. And now you're doing your summer classes and Jackson's been done for 2 months. And now you're just you're like, why is no one going in the brand new Jackson building? Oh, shoot. Ooh, got to remove that rule. You can, if you don't put it here, you can go into, the buildings, let's say, and you can tell them to do not optimize. And that's inside the usage controls of the buildings, is where you can tell it to do that. Let's see. Another great one, like I said, regions. For those who, maybe those who have never knew about regions. Regions are a group of rooms. So I'm going to save and close. And I'm actually going to duplicate for a second. So regions are a great way. So under settings, under resources is regions. So regions are a great way for you to group rooms. So here we have a region called computer labs. And you can see all of the computer labs are all chosen in this region. So regions could be used. I could set up a rule. So I'm going to go back into my preference set real quick. And I want to say, so I'm going to add a rule. And let's see, I should have a computer. Let's just say this core subject is a computer subject, and I want to put it in that region. So I want to go regions, add computer labs, and I want to require it. So basically here I just said this core subject, which is our computer subject on computers, everything computers. I want it to go under these computer labs, under this region. So what it's going to do is when it goes to run the optimizer tool and it starts to run those preferences and it comes to, oh, okay, they want the core subject in the following rooms. It just makes it easier. Now, you could definitely go in here and go add all of the rooms of all the computer labs. You could totally do that, but wasn't it much easier should not have should not have put this in so much. Um, much easier. Just to put regions in. Much easier. All right, so I have that in. So I'm going to save this. So the rule of thumb for another best practice, a rule of thumb is, I would say, at least six rules. You know, if you want to go crazy and you have 200 rules, hey, as long as 200 rules get you what you need, that's perfect. You know, it really just kind of depends. You know, you want to have enough rules that it's going to the optimizer is going to do. You know, if you have, let's say you have 2,500 sections, that you're scheduling for, and optimizer does, with all of your rules, and it took you, 2-3 hours of rules, adding things in, and at the end you're like, okay, I hope this is good. um then it's going to be good to see, um then that was worth it. If it's out of 2,500 and now it has 50 bottlenecks. So the bottlenecks can be caused by those ones that are required. So here I'm basically saying, so for this one, I said core subject and has to be in this region. Well, there's only 7 rooms here. And if, of the 7 rooms, you have enough for 8 rooms. Well, guess what? One of those rooms has got a bottleneck because it couldn't go anywhere. There's no place to put it. So I mean, a lot of those are it's good to put enough rules in that's going to do the job. And there's going to be times where it's just gonna. I mean, you're going to have to tweak and manually do some, but hey, if you only have to do 20, 25, and the optimizer did the rest, hey, that's thumbs up for that one. My last comment I wanted to make about scheduling preferences, once you're done, so I'm going to save and close. I'm actually going to come over to the academics and scheduling preferences. We usually recommend when you do this for the first time, and you come over here, you do a new optimizer, fill in your subject, production term, choose your term. Choose your preference set, general spring 2023 reference test. Leave everything as much alone as you can. Now, if you have back-to-back instructors, same building, great, that's fine. And let's say you have back-to-back of 10 minutes usually. The one thing I always tell people to do the first time, just to make sure everything looks good, all your rules kind of aren't going to cause too much trouble. This minimum seat fill percentage, bring it down to 0 and then let it run. And what that does is that just, you're basically just going through this, and you're basically just telling it, hey, I want to, it's kind of like room capacity and max capacity. I want it to be 0. So just run it and let's see what it looks like. You can get exactly what you're looking for. It's really just something to play with. This is the sandboxes, the optimized sandboxes is probably one of my favorite things, just because you can really play with it and not harm a thing because no one clicked the publish button. So, all right. Well, any questions on anything? You guys can use the Q&A or the chat button. But any questions on, and by the way, we are recording this. So any questions on the scheduling preferences? Like I said, it's good to get as much as needed in here. You can move things around. Little plus button right here opens things up so you can see everything that's hidden. Any questions? The recording will be available, by the way. So if anybody needs uses the reference, definitely take a look at it, and we'll have it. But yeah, that's no other questions. I really appreciate everybody coming. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to our support team. If you have any questions, thank you.
Do you want to tell them about our next webinar?
Oh, yes, thank you. Our next webinar, thank you, Maggie. Our next webinar will be September 28th, and will be on the request forms. So it'll be a really good one on the request forms, and that will be with Peter. That's it. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.